when they asked me to speak, I wanted to be as controversial as I could. So I thought of the most controversial topic I could think of, and it's global finance in Hong Kong at the end of the American empire. So a bit about my company. It's called Digital Financial Solutions. It's a Hong Kong-based company. And so what we do is we use digital finance to solve your problems. And we have a lot of partners. It's a small company in Hong Kong, but we have lots of partners throughout the world. In this part of the world, two of the companies that we work with is an IT company called Tegrasoft and also a Bitcoin exchange called Space BTC. And some of the people from those companies are here. So about the type of problems that we solve, okay, if you want to move value or funds from point A to point B, and you need to figure out how to do that, we can try to solve that problem. If you want to invest money or if you need investment, we just look at it and see how to solve that problem. And the reason why I started this company was I used to work in Wall Street, and I got very, very annoyed. The reason I got very annoyed is that you look at the rich people in any country, the richest people in the Ukraine, the richest people in Russia, the richest people in China, the richest people in the US, and they're all friends with each other. And so if you're a rich person in one country, you're friends with the rich people in every other country. And if you need investment, if you need to move money, if you need to hide money, it's easy for you to do it. So what I actually wanted to do is to create a company to give all the stuff that all the rich people in the world have and give it to the middle class or people who want to be middle class. Part of the reason it's selfish is because I wasn't born into a particularly rich family. I don't think I'm going to be one of the richest people. I think I'm just going to be middle class. And I want the banks to treat me the same way that they treat the wealthy people. So about me, I'm an American-born Chinese living in Hong Kong. I grew up in Florida, and I spent most of my time in Texas. And if you know anything about the US, Texans have a reputation for being very, very blunt and outspoken. So I was born in 1969. I was an astrophysicist. I did my PhD on essentially black holes and supernova. Got my bachelor's at MIT, PhD, University of Texas at Austin. I worked at JP Morgan. 3 years in New York, 3 years in Hong Kong, and I'm now based in Hong Kong. So people ask me, okay, since you're an academic, you like studying black holes and astrophysics and all this stuff that's going on in the sky, why did you end up working in an investment bank? And I explain it to you in financial terms. It's called what I call the second Einstein problem. So there's an annoying problem with black holes and string theory and all this physics stuff is it doesn't change. So you have Albert Einstein discover something about black holes, and then you're done. There's no more jobs for another second Einstein to work through this. So the nice thing about people and finance and money is everything changes. So literally one thing that happened at JP Morgan was that they paid a whole bunch of us physicists to come up with an interest rate model. It worked for 3 years. It stopped working. Then you have to hire the same people to actually come up with a new model. And so this means lots of jobs and lots of work. So one of the things I like to do is to think big thoughts. Okay, so how does the universe work? How does the global economy work? And so one of the things that I find interesting is that everything seems to be changing. I mean, you've got Brexit, you've got Donald Trump, you've got all these crazy things happening in the world, but nobody seems to have a big story for what's going on. And so what the story that I tell, and I like arguing with people, so if you think this is wrong, please feel free to argue, is that the story for the last 150 years has been the story of global empires. Before 1945, you had the French and the British Empire, and Hong Kong was sort of the last major location of the British Empire. Between 1945 and 1991, you had two major empires. You had the American, what I call the American Empire, and the Soviet Empire. And the nice thing about it is that they were smart enough not to use the word empire. After 1991, you had what I call an American Empire that lasted, and I would claim that it lasted up until January 20th, 2017. So what makes an empire an empire? And the thing about what you find that's interesting about an empire is that they claim to know what's good for you. So if you ask George W. Bush, why did you invade Iran and Afghanistan, right? He's not going to say it's because of the oil, it's not because of anything. It's because the US knows how to run other countries better than they do. And that's the core ideology of a global empire, is that the country thinks that it can run the world because it knows better how to run the world than other people. And in order for that to happen, you have to have control over education, you have to have control over finance, and you have control over language and culture. Now, what causes an empire to fall, and earlier in the talk, people were talking about what was the big thing that would cause blockchain and Bitcoin to take off. Now, what happens in the end is that people get tired. You're sending all this money, you're sending all these troops overseas to fight these soldiers, and then you realize everybody's losing their jobs locally. So what happens is that once people are no longer convinced that they have the authority to tell other countries what to do, the empire starts contracting and things start changing. And that's what's basically happened in the United States. So that impacts world economies, because what happens is that, and this becomes really obvious if you live in Hong Kong, which is the center of world trade. The US dollar is the standard unit of global finance. You cannot buy anything in large amounts across the globe without US dollars. And there's an entire support structure to support that. You have major banking centers in New York City and London, and you'll find that most of the banks in London are American banks. The technology centers are in Silicon Valley, the universities, Harvard, Stanford, and Oxford and Cambridge. And this turns out to be unsustainable, because in order to actually sort of rule the world, you have to constantly be spending time and effort spending money overseas. And the other problem is that you end up with a situation where the people that are in the banking system are benefiting very much, but everybody else is wondering, why are my jobs going overseas? And in the case of the US, that finally came to a close with Donald Trump, and you see similar things happening in Europe with Brexit. So why the currency system is changing is that right now, the US dollar is the global currency. And this requires, in order for people to use the US dollar, that you actually, the US dollar basically has to export money. So right now, I think Russia has $1 trillion in US dollars, China has 3 trillion, everybody has trillions and trillions of dollars. And if you want to grow the world economy with the current system, then the US will have to keep exporting, sending out dollars. And it's very clear that the US is no longer willing to do this. I mean, the US has pulled out of Trans-Pacific Partnership. The Federal Reserve is raising rates, even though the world economy is still not in great shape, because the US is now becoming, in some sense, selfish because it's tired of sending all this money overseas. So what's going to happen is that instead of a centralized system that's based on the banks in New York and London and on the US dollar, you're going to have a decentralized system. Hong Kong is going to be a center. I didn't say the center because there are going to be multiple centers of the new system. It's at the boundary between the old system and the new system. One of the problems if you try to do business in New York is that, or London, is that people are so tied in with the way things have been done in the past that you can't do anything different. Now, Hong Kong is still connected with sort of the old financial system, but it's still connected with new financial systems. There are lots of people coming in and interacting. There are people from all over the world talking and interacting, and their connections with the rest of Asia. If you want to do business in China, it's actually better if you go directly to Beijing or Shanghai. But if you want to do business with China, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, then Hong Kong is a very nice place, because then you can go from that direction to every place else in Asia. So what we do is we help people set up in Hong Kong. We're doing smart contracts and smart contracts law. We're doing trade with Africa, and we're trying to build a blockchain supercomputer. Now, I'm not going to spend the rest of the time talking about this, because when we do this, we find that there's a single barrier that keeps us from doing anything, and that's payments. The problem that you have is that right now you've got the new system of blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and you've got the old system of banks. The moment you take something from the new system, I call it attaching a jet engine to a donkey cart. The moment you try to touch the old system, everything stops. You run into regulations from wherever. So the first thing that we have to do in order to go to the new system is to figure out how to do simple payments. So here's an example of what we're doing. People want to move money from the U.S. from China to the U.S. What's happening is that because the U.S. is no longer exporting dollars, the dollar is becoming more valuable. This means that if you're a trader, you want to keep the U.S. dollars that you have, and if you're in China, you want to buy U.S. dollars in the U.S. So this seems to be a simple problem. So you have this person who has lots of US dollars. They want Chinese currency. You have this other person that has lots of Chinese currency in China, and they want to get US dollars, right? So, okay, you just get the two people to talk to each other, and you connect them. You find that there's a problem, is that those two people don't know each other. They don't trust each other. You can say, okay, give me the money, and I'll do the swap, and then you run the problem that they don't trust you. They think that you're going to run away with the money, and for all you know, they know you might. So what we ended up doing is we use Bitcoin as collateral. So what happens is that instead of, we find somebody that both people trust, and then we have the person who has the US dollars say, okay, we convert to Bitcoin and this person holds it, right? If everything goes right, he gets paid Chinese currency and pays out US dollars. If something goes wrong, then the third person says, okay, this person ran off with your money, here's the Bitcoin and you can sell it. And that avoids a whole bunch of problems. So the other problem that we have is a problem that I think everybody from outside of the Ukraine has when they landed, is that when I landed, I really, really wanted to have local currency in my pocket. So when I go to the bank in Hong Kong, I say, I've got Hong Kong dollars, I'd like to have a Ukrainian currency. They say, okay, we can do Thai currency, but we don't know anything about Ukrainian currencies. And that's very, very annoying for me, because I really wanted to come to Ukraine with everything already straightened out. So what we're actually doing is we're trying to create digital currencies for every single currency. We're starting with Chinese currency because there are all these rules involving imports and exports of Chinese currency. So we happen to understand how the Chinese currency system works, and we're actually working with some of our partners to give a token that you can convert to Chinese currency. Now, once you go to every single country and say, okay, I'm doing business in Kenya, I find somebody in Kenya that understands Kenyan currency and creates a digital currency that corresponds to Kenyan currency. And you go to each of the 200 currencies. At that point, if I'm in Hong Kong, I need a Ukrainian currency. I just find somebody online that has digital Ukrainian currency and then do the exchange there. And this is the thing that we're working with. So I want to come here not so much to talk, but to listen to people. So I actually want to find out, what are your problems? How can I help you? I'm really interested in getting business connecting both sides of the Eurasian subcontinent together so that we can all make more money. So here's my contact information, here's my WeChat, and I'd be glad to take any questions that people have.